I'm gonna give you guys 6 reasons why you still need to be using a rotary polisher in 2026. I'm gonna be really honest. I've never trained someone, never seen someone learn how to properly use a rotary polisher and go back to using DA only or say, like, I don't really think it's worth it. I don't like to use it. Literally not once. I've done in-person trainings with literal hundreds of people at this point, teaching people just how to use a rotary polisher. Not once has it happened where they're like, yeah, I don't think it's worth it. So it is still relevant. And before we even talk about how to use a rotary, I need to try to convince you guys why, because the internet is just complete slop at this point as far as forums, YouTube, Facebook groups. You know, there's so much misinformation about how this machine works and why it works and why it's actually still relevant and not obsolete anymore. Because so much marketing and so much money has gone into marketing these things because of how easy they are to use. When this is a very precise tool that has a very, very specific purpose. And I will admit it, this is a more difficult tool to use. And I think that is the bottom line as to why so many people don't use it. I think there's a lot of excuses out there, a lot of cope of like, oh, you might burn an edge. It's harder to train my guys. I don't want the risk in my shop. The thing is that if you look at almost any other professional industry, professional trade industry to be specific, that practice isn't translated that well. There are dangerous tools that are used in every industry. I always use the analogy of impact guns. You know, the high torque, heavy duty pneumatic or, you know, Milwaukee heavy duty impact guns. Yeah, they can shear off bolts, they can round off bolts, they can break bolts, but you learn how to use it and the bounds and the limits to use it within. And then professionals use that tool because it gets things done faster. Same deal with the rotary. There are ways that you use it, there's boundaries that you have to stay inside, but they know the limits of the tool, they stay within those limits, they, you know, follow the right guidelines and techniques, and then they get the results that they're looking for. So if we're being really honest, DA polishers are really easy to use. Almost anyone can use them. And they're fantastic for that because you can put it in the hands of any one of your employees, any person who's trying to get into detailing, and you can get pretty good results, and you can get really good results if you practice with the tool. But the thing is that at the end of the day, if you're just trying to just get through enhancements and one steps and just polish cars and slap a coating on it, slap a sealant on it, and send the car and have a good day, make the +car look a little bit shinier, sure, you can run a DA all day long. But what I'm talking about is actual real paint correction work, stuff where you're chasing out 90+% defect removal. When you say, oh, I want to have high-end clients, well, you're going to need to get high-end results. You're going to need to be able to take a car, you know, the 2006 911 Turbo that's been sitting in someone's garage and had cardboard boxes on top, and then a new collector buys it and wants it to be their weekend car and they want it to look shiny inside their garage. You simply are not going to be able to efficiently get the car to that point only DA polishing. Eventually, yes, you will get there. I promise you. I'm not saying this for me. I'm getting nothing out of saying this. You're handicapping yourself by trying to only do all of that work with a DA. Like I said, I don't get anything out of that. If you want to think, you know, there's a lot of ego in this industry. A lot of people think that they're the best in town, that they're the best at paint correction in their local area. If you're not doing paint correction with this thing, I can almost assure you that you're not. And yeah, your ego may say, well, I can. Well, take anyone that properly knows how to use this tool and stack them up against your work. I promise that even if the quality is the same, one of them is probably gonna get to that result faster. Here's the deal though. I'm gonna show you 6 things today, and I'm gonna show you instead of tell you. Yeah, we could just sit here and talk, and you guys could parrot me and support rotary polishing in the same way that you maybe parrot other YouTubers, other people on Facebook, other people in forums, and talk about how you can do everything with a DA just fine, no problem. But I don't need to just say anything, I can actually show you, and that's the way I'd rather do it. Reason number 1, cutting with a rotary is faster. You're gonna get results faster. I don't care what anyone tells you, what you've heard, what you've seen on YouTube, you can test for yourself. Forget what everyone says, go back at the end of the day, and try what people are telling you and see if it's true. So I'm gonna show you right here. 2 identical size squares. I have a 21mm DA that's gonna be the fastest cutting out of all the DAs, long stroke DA. Same exact clean pads, same exact compound. I'm gonna try to use the same exact pressure, same exact size of panels. I'm gonna try to keep everything the same other than just the action of the tool. Rotary versus 21mm DA. Which one looks better after 1 minute of work? All right, 2 identical size squares here. We're gonna use the same kind of pad, same kind of compound. I'm gonna try to keep the pressure, the tool speed, the arm speed. I'm gonna try to keep everything the same between these two sections here. So first things first, I do wanna get a baseline panel temp here. So it's a hot day here in Florida, even though we're in the shade. Right in the middle of the panel, 96.1 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, we're gonna lay compound down, 1400 RPM, that's home speed for me. I'm gonna spread the compound across the panel. I'm gonna do the same thing with the DA without the timer running, and then I'm gonna start the timer once I actually start processing. All right, there's our spread. Let's give it 1 minute of work. Here we go. Immediately after, right in the middle of the panel, 108. It's gonna start cooling off as we go. 108 degrees Fahrenheit for the rotary side. All right, the 21 millimeter DA side, ambient temp of the panel, right in the middle, 95.7 degrees there. I tried to use pretty big dots to try to equate to, you know, what the 5 or 6 inch line that was left of compound on the rotary side. This is a little bit more than I think what people normally would use here. All right, I'm gonna spread this out on low speed, and then I'm gonna start the timer and work it for a minute. All right, we got our ambient temperature, compound spread out, same pad, 21 millimeter tool. Let's go for 1 minute. Same exact amount of time, right in the middle of the panel, right away. 129, 127, it's gonna start cooling off as we go. So significantly, what, 20 degrees hotter than the rotary side? We'll split the difference and call it 128 degrees Fahrenheit. Reason number 2, the rotary polisher is gonna cut cooler. Well, how does it cut cooler if it cuts faster? Well, we're gonna run this machine with a little bit of a tilt, and that is gonna create air circulation underneath the pad. Cutting the paint cooler means we reduce the risk of swelling up the paint and getting a false reading, a false visual of the quality of our paint correction work. So you can see that we can cut cooler and faster with a rotary. This is gonna leave us with a truer finish that isn't gonna have defects settling out of the paint over time. We're able to cut about 15 degrees cooler. We were only 12 degrees above ambient temperature with the rotary, and we were 31.5 degrees above ambient temperature with the orbital. So we got less cut and we swelled up the paint. I think that's case closed for that. Reason number 3 is that we're gonna get a much more precise cut up against the edge of panels and up against the edge of objects on cars. So because a rotary only spins on one axis, the most powerful part of the pad is right at the edge because it's not oscillating. A DA, on the other hand, because it's oscillating, you get these two working zones. You get this inner ring where the pad is always in contact with the paint. You have this outer ring where the pad is only there for a moment before it gets oscillated to the other side of the throw. It's gonna look like this. There's that inner ring right there, and then there's the outer ring. And that gap in between is where the machine is working really inefficiently. So when you have vehicles that have really complicated edges, now this is a pretty simple Toyota Camry, but you have defects on every car that they're not just always in the middle of the panels. Your defects are always distributed up against the edges of the panels. So you need a tool that when you're cutting, you can really precisely get all the way up to the edges of your panels and get a full correction done on the car versus something like this, where it's much more difficult. Now, this is a flat panel, we could really easily grab these, but as the cars become more difficult, as the edges become more difficult, a rotary is a much more precise tool for cutting and getting defects out against the edges of your panels. Reason number 4 is that we're gonna get a more uniform cut across the panel, and we can see that in our 2 sections here. All right, so I'm gonna wipe off the compound. I'm gonna wipe it off with panel prep so that we're not masking our results here. We can see the true difference visually between the 2 sides. Obviously, we're able to see a difference between the temperature, 20 degrees hotter on the DA side than on the rotary side. That's because we can run the rotary at a tilt, allow air circulation under the pad, while still using the same kind of pad and abrasive, so giving us the cut that we need. All right, there's our rotary cut. Here's our DA cut. Let's load it up with some panel prep. ACA 500 that I'm using here doesn't have any fillers, but the oils will kind of mask your work and give you a false read of your cut. And this is not the best color to be doing this on because these metallic light colors hide defects really, really easily. But I think the paint was in bad enough condition that we'll be able to see the gist of what I'm talking about. Let's look at a side-by-side comparison between these 2 sides. We're gonna look at the amount of scratches removed, so that's what most people are looking at with paint correction, but we're also going to look at the difference in clarity when we're looking at the reflection of the light and the texture in the paint. All right, so here's our original paint condition. You can see we have little scratches, micro scratches, swirls all around this paint, and if we look at the texture of the paint, it is very wavy. It looks like the peel of an orange. Here's our rotary side, and those little wisps of light dancing off our light source are our rotary holograms. But we don't have any of the deep scratches or those random swirls scattered about. And if we look at the texture or just the reflection of the light, it is really clear and just a little bit of that factory orange peel is retained in the surface there. On the DA side, now we do not have those holograms popping through the finish at all, but we have significantly more texture left in the surface. That little ripple around the light. We don't have as much clarity. And if we look right at the tip of the finger right there, we still have a good amount of random deep scratches left scattered around our working section here. Okay, when we're talking about the uniformity of a cut, yes, you're gonna get holograms left behind in the surface when you cut with a rotary. That's the natural defect that gets left behind from the tool, from the motion of the tool. But those defects, the depth of those little micro scratches that were left behind from cutting, are also here. They're just scattered really evenly across the panel. So the depth of the finishing work, the amount of finishing work that we need to do to refine the haze that's left behind in this side that you can't see because of how light this paint is, but if it was any darker, it would be glaring, versus the amount of finishing work we need to do on this side is nearly identical. So we got a faster cut, we got a cooler cut, and even though there's holograms there, people freak out about the holograms. Oh, rotary leaves holograms. Well, you don't just leave the paint like that, you finish it out. So we're gonna come in, we're gonna do our finishing steps, and we're gonna be left with a much more uniform cut because the tool is only moving in one single direction. It's not bouncing around and vibrating on you like crazy. That's why we were able to get so much more clarity out of the paint on this side compared to this side. Reason number 5 is that this tool is really, really versatile. We can change out the backing plate to a bunch of different sizes and tools really, really easily. Now, this is just a practical benefit, is that you can really easily just switch between attachments with a rotary polisher. So here, now we have a 3-inch polisher, we unscrew it, we put our 5-inch backing plate on, now we have a 5-inch polisher. You can get 1-inch backing plates, you can get 6-inch backing plates, you can get little remote extension wands to get into door handles. So you get a really versatile tool with one rotary polisher. Reason number 6 is that learning how to properly use this tool is gonna make you better at paint correction, period. It's a challenging tool to use. You're gonna get rid of the handicap of the DA, and this is gonna force you to learn something new, to maneuver a tool that works completely different from the DA, and it is gonna translate over to your DA work, to your rotary work. Everything about you as a detailer, when you choose to learn something new and actually challenging like this, is gonna make you better. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because when we use a rotary polisher, we're gonna leave a hologram in the paint. We're replacing a random scattered swirl mark defect that's on the car with a smaller and more controlled synthetic defect, which is a rotary hologram. We're gonna have to polish that out. We're gonna have to get a DA out and polish those holograms out of the entire car after we do our cut. Now, here's how it makes you better. When you have rotary holograms in a low spot of a panel like this, where defects naturally are harder to remove and like to hide, when we're getting our DA out and polishing this out, and we're leaving rotary holograms in these little spots, leaving rotary holograms in the edges of the panels, what's that telling us? That tells us that our DA work at a baseline is not very good. When you're doing your DA 1-steps, you're probably leaving defects in all these same areas, in your edges, in your low spots of your panels. So learning how to use a rotary, getting a faster cut, putting a hologram in the paint, and then learning how to chase that hologram out with a DA is gonna make your DA work better. You're gonna get better at using a DA, your 1-step paint corrections, your paint enhancements, where you're using a DA orbital polisher only. Your quality is gonna get better because you're gonna get better defect removal in those tight areas. All right, altogether, there's 6 reasons why this is still a relevant tool that you need to be using if you're a professional detailer. If you care about getting good and efficient results in 2026, you need to be using a rotary polisher. You need to at least pick it up and start learning how to use it, figure it out. I have a school group where I teach people online, and I have a bunch of courses and short videos about how to use this tool, why to use this tool. The link for the school group is gonna be in the description to see all of those things. I would say that hopefully this changed your mind, but I don't want to change your mind. I want you to actually try this on your own for yourself, not just take my word for it, and then let that change your mind. Maybe you'll learn something. So thank you guys for watching.